contract, contract law. Specifically, I'm going to come up with examples on how to explain contract law to a 10-year-old because I've always thought about, hey, how do I explain this to my own kids? And again, I'm not an attorney. It's not legal advice. It's not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call. I'm just coming up with ways to learn how to explain these things in a simple manner so that even a 10-year-old can understand this. And on contract law, they use all these terms and terminology, but if you can't explain it in a way that, if I can't explain it in a way that my kids understand, then I haven't mastered it. And after interviewing people for over 3 years, I just wish there was some point that someone sat down and actually explained all this information to me. So now I'm studying all the content about how to become a real estate agent. And I thought, hey, why don't I just take what I'm learning and try to digest it? And the best way for me to master it is by explaining it to you. And again, I'm coming with analogies, and I am really hoping that you can help me come up with better analogies because I'm just trying to be a better dad. And I like to think that if I can pass on the skills and the knowledge to my kids, then I would have been a successful parent. So let's get into contract law. All right. It might sound intimidating, but once you get a hang of it, you'll see why it's essential for every real estate transaction. My hope is that by the end of this, you're going to learn what makes an agreement legally binding, what can void it, and why it matters so much when you're buying and selling a home. All right. So let's talk about why contract law matters at a very high level. Right. Contracts are the backbone of property deals, right? From it could be a simple couple of pages to complex 30-page agreement. You just want to make sure that both sides know exactly what they're promising each other so that no one ends up disappointed or cheated, right? I like to think of it as if you had a if you made a pinky promise with a friend and say that, hey, you're going to trade some stickers or some Pokemon cards, if you both keep your word, then no problems, right? But if someone forgets or they change the terms and say, I should get decided to give you this sticker instead of that sticker, then the pinky promise might not be enough. And it's hard if it isn't written, right? So a written contract is like a grown up version of how we keep things fair. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is let's talk about the elements of a valid contract. Generally, a contract needs four things. One is a competent party, an offer and acceptance, a lawful purpose, and some kind of consideration. And consideration is some sort of value exchange, right? It could be a service, it could be money, it could be time. All that stuff matters. And you need all these ingredients because let's say you were baking cookies, right? You need flour, you need butter, you need sugar, you need the baking sheet. If you leave something out, sometimes the recipe just doesn't work. And you need all those parts of a recipe for a contract. All right. So, next step, what makes a contract void or voidable? A void contract is basically a deal that was never legally valid in the first place. For example, if you're trying to sell something that isn't yours, that matters, right? A voidable contract means that it was valid, but once I can back out if there is a major issue, especially if someone felt like they were tricked. So let's say you promise to sell a car that you don't own. That's almost as if you're promising to lend your friend a bike that belongs to someone else. That deal was never real because you never owned that thing. Okay. All right. Next up, let's talk about performance, discharge, and remedies. Right? When you have both sides of or both parties and they fulfill their side of the bargain, such as paying money, transferring title to a property, the contract is discharged. Okay. But if one side does not perform, the other person might sue or demand some type of remedy. So let's say you and your neighbor contract to build a fence together, right? Each is supposed to pay half, but your neighbor never chips in. You might ask them for their share, or you can take them to small claims court. What else do kids do in school? Think of it at a if you had a small group project at a school, right, where everyone promises to research one chapter. But if you do your part and your classmate slacks off and doesn't do their part, the teacher might penalize them or give you a chance to redo your part, right? Redo their part that they missed and they don't get credit. That's very similar to real estate contracts, right? They have consequences if one side does not keep up their end of the bargain, right? Sometimes it's called a breach. So let's talk about the most searched question about contract law, especially when it comes to real estate. And that was, what if someone backs out? If a buyer or a seller, if they walk away for no valid reason, right, that's typically a breach. The harm party, right, they might either keep a deposit, which is why you always have earnest money deposit for real estate, or they can sue for specific performance, which means that they want the deal completed as agreed, right? You're suing the other property to you're suing the other party to do what they originally promised to do. Now, what's a good analogy, right? Let's say your friend buys you a ticket and saves you a seat at a sold out movie, and you promise to pay them back for the ticket, but then you vanish. So your friend's gonna lose out on the price of the ticket. So they could demand, right, or sue you for the cost of the ticket because you owe them that money. Or maybe you said, hey, let's swap, or maybe you promised to swap your best Pokemon card for your friend's favorite action figure, and then you back out at the last second. Well, your friends say, no, I relied on that deal and I want to complete it. That's essentially specific performance in kid terms, because you're asking them to do what they say they were going to do. It's really important, right? So I know that was a very quick dive on contract law, and some of the analogies it came up with, they might make sense, they might not make sense. But hey, it was at least a try, right? And I just wish someone would explain some of these complex concepts with very day-to-day scenarios, or even scenarios that kids can face. So I hope this was helpful, everybody. Today's day 542. I can't thank you enough for staying, staying supportive of the podcast. I hope you spent some quality time with your family and friends today, because that's what life is all about. So I'm gonna go tuck my kid into bed, and I hope you all have an amazing night. Have an amazing Monday. I'll see you all tomorrow for day 543. Have a good one, everybody.